my my first client was Dana White.
What?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I I started making sneakers again during COVID. Finished up my first shoe in September of 2020. I finished my first shoe in September of 2020. From there, I spent the next few months sort of I probably made like three more pairs for myself in the time. Just kind of worked on my skill a little bit. Two to three more pairs. I think three more. So I'd made four at the time. And a friend of a friend basically worked for Dana, and somebody that he worked with was like, "Oh, we want to get Dana a gift. Do you happen to know any shoe customizers?" This person was like kind of in the sneaker culture in here in Vegas, but not a customizer themselves. So the person was like, "Hey, do you happen to know anyone?" And they were like, "Actually, yeah, I do. I know somebody." So they sent them my way. And they were initially looking for some paint, and it was for Howler Head. So he was just launching
Hmm.
Howler Head in
Yeah.
Nevada. And so they were kind of doing it to celebrate that. And so she was just like, "Yeah, we want to do this. And, we want to, what would it look like?" And so I was like, "Okay, well, I can definitely like paint you something." Cause again, at that time I had kind of started painting a little tiny bit. But I was like, but I just started doing like the handmade stuff. Like that's where it's at. We got to do that. So she was like, "Sure, let's do it." And I ended up taking or getting an order for two pairs, a high top and a low top Jordan 1, and those were due by June, like sometime in June, or maybe it was, yeah, I think it was June. And sorry, and I ended up delivering them. He posted them on his page, and they really got a lot of attention. And I had some friends of mine here in town. Yeah, that's it. I had some friends
These are
in.
sick.
Thank you. So that was my fifth and sixth pair I'd ever made. And my buddies made the box. They made this super cool wooden custom box for it, and it housed both of my pairs. But yeah, that was pretty much that. So he got those, really really loved them, posted them, which was very nice. He didn't have to do, and I got a lot of attention for it. It was like kind of like this big moment. It was like, holy shit. And then I kind of thought that was it. And then 2 or 3 days later, that same person called me, and she was like, "Hey, he really really loves those sneakers that you made. He wants to know if you can make two pairs. He wants to know if you can make these two pairs for the Nelk boys, but he wants them in 2 weeks." And this is, again, I'm working full time, and I have not made very many shoes, so these things are taking me a really really long time to make. Um, that was when I started pulling the all nighters and all that. I was working as fast as I could, ended up stringing together. I think I went 2 days ultimately in the end. And that's what I have to keep reminding
Yeah.
myself of it. You know what I mean? Is, you know, people like the work because I've put a lot of time throughout my life kind of working towards this type of thing, And I
Yeah.
think gaining that knowledge too before I learned the craft is a totally different way of looking at it. And it's kind of like, it feels backwards, but it worked out so well that I'm just happy that everything worked out the way it did.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the interesting thing with you is like there's no football background, at least to my knowledge, right?
Zero.
And it's like, so how did that transition? Because like the factory lab with Jalen Ramsey thing made sense. It was like, okay, so factory lab is based in LA. Jalen used to be with Adidas. Adidas was with Yeezy. We can see the connections. They both live in LA. There's like that. But then like, why did they reach out to you when it's like there's no track record of you doing cleats? You're not even in LA with them. Like you're close
Yeah.
ish. But like, how did they start with you?
Um, I think, and I I mean, this is an educated guess, I suppose, because I never really straight up asked them like, why are you approaching me about it? You know what I mean? Because I feel like I was like probably
Yeah.
scared. That was probably a question I thought myself, but was scared to ask. But I made a pair of dolphins themed Travises for a client of mine. Excuse me. Um, and Complex ended up reposting them on Twitter or something like that. He saw them on Twitter, so then his manager shot me a message and was just like, "Hey, Jalen's a big fan of your work. Can we talk about doing a project? Blah blah blah." So that was kind of that. Nothing. We talked briefly just through text. Nothing really came of it, which is fine. You know what I mean? We were just kind of like, let's keep some stuff in mind. Hopefully, we can work on something in the future. And that was that. And then, what's so funny though is I was texting a friend of mine late September. This was September 24th of this past year. I was texting him and he was like, "Dude, why don't you do cleats or something, man? Like it would be so like it would be cool. There's not that many people that could do it. You could definitely do it." And dude, my response was so stupid because it was just kind of like, "Oh, I like the sneaker thing for now." And I think because again, there's no football tie, there wasn't
Yep.
anything really, so I was like, I think I'm just gonna keep with. Plus, it was a different machine too, so I would have needed a completely different sewing machine to take on cleat work. So I was just kind of like, I don't have the right machine, and it's just, I think I'm just gonna do the sneaker thing for a while, but who knows? 3 days later is when Jalen's manager, ended up texting me again. And he was like, so the 27th of September, and he was like, "Hey, man, do you have time to jump on a quick call?" And I said, yes. So we jumped on a call, and he told me, he was like, "Hey, Jalen is recovering from his surgery, and he's going to be coming back to play, sooner. I think they were looking at like week 10 or week 8, I think is when he came back actually. So they were like, yeah, we're kind of projecting 8, 9, 10 kind of being where he's returning, or would you be able to do that? Are you interested in doing that? They gave me the whole backstory and telling me that he was playing in his cleats and that, but I didn't really get too much context on what their plan was. More so just that he had gotten
Yep.
the cleat produced, he was going to be wearing that new cleat and wanted to debut them in a cool way. So they wanted to he was like, can you do a pair per week until the end of the season basically. And at that point, I mean, yeah, I was like, absolutely. Without a doubt, I was like, oh, I want to do it. So I bought that new machine that I was talking about, and we just started the process. They sent me the cleats. I was able to kind of work
Yeah.
it. Another call. Everyone's calling me now. I'm so popular all of a sudden. um but sorry about that. So they sent me the cleats, and then I just started basically kind of trying to figure out how I was going to do it. I kind of had an idea, you know what I mean? I knew I was going to be building a shell for the outside of the shoe, and then attaching it somehow right to the outside of the cleat. I pretty much knew that going into it, but everything else, it was like we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants and trying things. And I don't know if you saw my most recent post from, yes, I think it was 2 days ago. It was like this white Tiffany pair that I did, but I wrapped the sock liner in Python, thinking that I had left these two small little relief cuts in the middle, thinking like that was going to really do anything, but he got them and couldn't even get them on. Um, so they were scrapped. So he couldn't end up using them, but it was, first of all, I do want to say this, like, he's been so cool. He was like the nicest guy and so easy to work with. Like, I can't say enough good things about him and his manager. Absolutely amazing. Like, I hope I work with them forever. Um, but yeah, we were really kind of like figuring it out as we went, and just sort of figuring out what was
Yeah.
working, what wasn't working. And I'm learning his style because he's, has a particular taste and wants things to, he has preferences just like we all do. And, um, you know, so I feel like towards the end of the season was when I really started to like learn him better. And I knew if I, what I could send over, and knew what he'd be into, and kind of knew what he wouldn't be into. And so it was a lot of fun, man. It was really fun getting into it, and it gave me a lot of confidence to continue to branch out, and that the skills really do translate over when, and before there was a big doubt that they would.
Yeah. Well, and that's like one of the things that's interesting to me is obviously you breaking into this space, but like we talked about before, when Jalen came out in the cleats, it was like, oh, he's got these crazy cleats. They're his own thing. We posted about him, all that stuff, yada yada. But then like I didn't even know that when he first came out, he was gonna be wearing customs. Like I was just like, oh, of course he's gonna wear his own thing. And then it's like Halloween, I think was the first week, and so he was wearing a pair of Halloween cleats. I was like, okay, so
Hmm.
Halloween makes sense. But then the next week and the next week there were still customs.
Hmm.
And it's so we thought at that point you were gonna get like in the same way for like so you said with like Dana, like flooded with messages, but like you told me like I think you said like it didn't really react the same. Like you weren't like it's not like NFL guys were just like hitting you up left and right for stuff.
At all. I mean, like at all. It was pretty surprising. I had a gentleman hit me up yesterday. Um, so we'll see where that ends up going, but for next season. But I mean, I was I don't necessarily want to just flood my, because I love the sneakers ultimately. You know what I mean? The craft is great, and I love doing cleats. Don't get me wrong, but I love sneakers. Like I love doing sneakers.
Yeah.
It's my thing. So I want to keep it in the mix. I don't want to only have cleat work, but also like, I mean, it would be, I should be so lucky to have, multiple athletes that want pairs done throughout the whole season. I mean, like I welcome it with open arms. I think it would be so much fun. I just I guess I just am happy and grateful that Jalen had a good experience with me. He expressed his gratitude multiple times. Like I said, he's so nice and really appreciative with the hard work that I was doing. Way more than he had to be. Like I said, he's just such a nice guy. But yeah, it was really great, and I'm looking forward to doing something special for the Pro Bowl for him. That's at least the plan now. We don't really know exactly what pairs we're doing or pair we're doing, but I'm excited either way to have one last good crack
Yeah.
at it, and put a nice bow on the season. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think more will come. I think really we were halfway through the season when it happened. So I think it's one of those things,
Yeah.
if you're a guy that wants my type of work, you already looked into it. You know what I mean? Like you probably already had, if you were going to do it, you already knew you were going to do it going into the season, most likely. That's the way I like to look at
Yeah.
it. You already reached out, you already, were putting stuff on. And thankfully, I think too, because I didn't have any other athletes that I was working on, we could get things done super quickly on Jalen's side, and I know that he was happy about that. Especially when you kind of get to those later weeks and you get to the playoffs, it's like, you don't want to make a cleat just to make a cleat, and then something happens and they lose or whatever. So it was nice to be able to just like, have a pair, have a week happen, and then we can be right back to it, because he was my only
Yeah.
NFL guy. I knew at least one day a week I had to dedicate to getting his cleats done. You know what I mean? Like that was my
Yeah.
block, and I could always focus on it. So I think it worked out. It worked out really well for him, getting kind of his, I should dipping his toes into the custom thing, right? But it was also perfect timing for me because I didn't really have too much on my plate, and it was a really nice, consistent challenge for me, that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
It was really fun to work on them, and see what worked and what didn't. It was a big learning experience.
Yeah. Like honestly, it'd kind of be interesting to have your perspective and then someone like Sean the Don. So like
Mm.
Sean is like a cleat customizer, and like he broke on the scene when he did the Byron Murphy Croc cleats, where he did the
Mhm.
yellow Crocs with like the Crocs
Oh
on the
yeah.
back and the cutouts and stuff, right? Those went everywhere. And like that's when I first learned about him and he blew up. But
Yeah.
like where you're saying you have time and like one person, Sean, um, he kept like we were talking to him and he was like, oh, like things are gonna slow down, things will slow down. And like he was saying that to us in September and it only sped up. And
Mm,
like you look and like this week still he's doing like 3 to 4 pairs per week, all custom.
yeah.
And like his biggest guy is Debo Samuel, who's in that
Mhm.
same tier as Jalen as far as like A tier brand goes.
Yeah.
And he's doing like for playoffs, like a custom Travis Scott for pregame, and then another one to actually wear. Like he wears a lot of what's the Devin, what's the Jordan? It's the cherry.
11
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
patent leather.
And yeah. And so he wears a ton of those. And it's like I think about him and I'm like, God damn, man, like as soon as the season's done, like you need a fucking break. Like
Dude, he's grinding, dude. Sean's my I mean, we've talked a little bit through DMs. He's a super nice guy, but he's definitely one of those guys to me that like was doing it when I was doing it. It was like when I was looking to
yeah,
see, hey, who's really active in the like the cleat thing. It was Croak, it was Coda, it was him, and I don't paint too. You know what I mean? So it's also very specific. There's some amazing customizers that are straight up paint. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, gosh, yeah, Sean's works amazing. Croak, I think that's how you pronounce it. Coda Customs as well. All those guys,
Mhm.
they're doing amazing things, and I'm glad to see other people sort of pushing the boundaries a little bit on the custom cleat thing. I think it's really cool to see.
Yeah.